July 21st, 2014.
Any great production is made up of those in front of the camera and simultaneously behind it. Those that produce everything from the elaborate sets to the amazing starships that fly across our screen are often the overlooked heroes in many a production. In this designer series, we're going to explore the artists that bring the concepts to life in the final frontier. First up is legendary starship designer Bill Krause. This is Treknicity.
So welcome to Treknicity, the Star Trek podcast. We redo the deep dive on all things Star Trek. So I'm your host today, Mike Raper, coming to you from snowy North Carolina. And with me are my co-hosts, Patrick Murray, coming to us from snowier Ohio, and Lars DeSenza in no snow ever, sunny California.
What are you talking about, man? We have snow. It's over there, over in the mountains.
I've got a song for that, by the way.
Yeah. So in this episode, we're going to start a new series called the Designer Series, and we're going to explore designers for the final frontier. And to do that, we have a very, very special guest, someone I've been really interested in his work for some time, is starship designer Bill Krause. So we can bring Bill on. There he is. Bill, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here.
Yeah, it's, all of us have seen your work. Think it's really, really impressive. Not just the designs that you came up with, but those models you build. I mean, those things are absolutely unreal.
Yeah, they are.
I see the pictures on Facebook. I follow it. I'm like, oh my God, how did he do? How did he do this? Absolutely. Just really fantastic designs. I think the most recent one I've seen is the revised D7. Where you've beefed up the neck connection and added some little wing disruptors to it. I was like, oh gosh, I want to see this on screen now.
Yeah. I built that last year, believe it or not.
It would have taken me a year to build it, let alone paint it, and it still wouldn't look very good. But
this is my full-time job, basically, since I've been retired. So I've got plenty of time to mess around with models and starships.
Well, you definitely do some really fantastic work. And if remind everybody your website.
Don't really have a website, though I'm on all the social media platforms, or most of them, on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky now.
Okay.
But you can find me as either Admiral Buck on any of the sites, or just my name, Bill Krause.
Yeah, if you're one of the half dozen people listening to us, definitely go check out Bill's work. If starship design, if you watch Star Trek, you have to be interested in it. If you're interested in seeing some really top quality stuff, definitely go check out his work. Okay.
Yeah. I know I've said it probably 100 times now, but we, all three of us on this show are currently playing Star Trek Adventures, and the second ship that we had been issued in the face of losing our last one to a bunch of Cardassians is the Sentinel class, which of course Bill is the designer of, and so we're all like, ooh, shiny.
Those are fun.
It is. So it's my fault. I run the game, and I decided early on I wanted to bring one of those in. So we let them run with a bucket for a little while before giving them, the cool Porsche. And it's been a lot of fun for everybody having something that looks familiar but still really new.
So
they've really been enjoying that.
Yeah. Did you find a 3D model of that to play with? Or I know I don't have one, but
no. We found a person who had, I guess, had rendered one. So theoretically, they do have the mesh and whatnot, but they are unreachable. So, we've been unable to really do anything other than what we've been able to get through static shots that we found.
Yeah.
I think Mike had purchased a copy of the plans or the layout.
Yeah, yeah. I never got them. The website that sells them, they have the designs up as a 17-page or $17 set, but they don't respond. They don't answer the emails. They don't ship anything.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of comments about that they just don't do it.
I heard that a
So
lot,
we got
yeah.
the free downloads from Cygnus, the webpage Cygnus. We use those, but
Okay.
yeah. So, we have some questions. Some of them are ours. Some of them are from viewers who are fans of your work. Actually, one person really asked when we put out ideas for episodes to say, could you interview Bill Krause? Because they absolutely love your work. I said, yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll see what we can do. And Lars reached out and, hey, here we are. So, I'm just going to kick this off. I think one of the questions all of us would like to know is, how did you get started in this process of designing these ships and doing the modeling? What led you to that?
Well, it's really always been a hobby for me. And I recently just got into that, which I shouldn't say recently, but within the last 10 years, got back into the hobby. Once my kids had grown enough where I didn't have to, spend much time with them anymore. But it was a hobby that I had done as a kid years ago. Growing up, I was in Star Wars and Star Trek and Space 1989 and Battlestar Galactica, and I built all these model kits. And I was always a big fan of Star Trek, and loved the show even as a kid when it was in syndication in the 70s, the original series. And when the movie started playing, and I was really getting back into the hobby, or back into the fandom of Star Trek, and I always wanted to see more of the fleet rather than just the Enterprise. So I always had ideas in my head of other ships that might exist in that universe. And it was really excited when I think it was Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, you see the Reliant. I went, oh, here's another ship that's not the Enterprise. It's an all new design. And I thought, well, there's my foray or my entry into trying to design stuff that I think kind of fits that look of another ship in the fleet that might exist and look at as part of a star fleet. You see Enterprise and Reliant, they all look like they use the same components, kind of rearranged differently. And I wanted to take that a step further and design ships that aren't just using the same components, but maybe designing a new design language. And there's been a lot of fan work with fan designs and things. And there was a book that came out in the early 90s called Ships of the Starfleet. It was a black-bound softcover edition, very professionally done. That kind of explored possibilities of other ships that could have existed in the TOS and TMP era. And that really, again, set my butt on fire. Like, these are what I want to do. I want to design things like this. But they were very conservative about what they were doing, just kind of changing little things here and there, adding a phaser turret there, moving something slightly over here. I was like, I wanted a big change. I wanted to design all new hulls, but make it still look like Star Trek. So these ideas kind of brewing in my head, and when I finally had time to sit down in front of my workbench and build something, not the Enterprise, the Shangri-La came to an existence, and I had some parts from a friend had donated me his old TMP model Enterprise kit, and I thought, that's a good start. And I started sketching some ideas and just wanted to sculpt something completely free form. Really, I did not draw any blueprints or do anything in 3D. It was before 3D. This is like 2014. And basically just drawing sketches on a cocktail napkin of what things might be, and then taking foam, urethane foam, and hand carving parts, a secondary hull or as a dorsal, and then casting that in the resin, test fitting, back and forth until I liked what I was seeing in front of me, kind of developing, and it developed as it went along. And never really had a clear view or vision of what that was going to look like until it was all done. And that really, from that point on, it's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to start drawing out plans completely and work from those plans. Because sometimes I'll start something and you may have a thought in your head, this might be a good idea, to just build it. And you start working on it, you realize this is not going to look good. And I just waste all this time and effort. So there's really have to go back and you got to sit down and draw it all out, like it before you start cutting plastic, and otherwise you're just going to find yourself just wasting your time. Because when you start designing on paper or even in 3D, you can play with the design in all directions and change the proportion of the cells and distances from each other and the scale of things, and really nail that down before you start building it. And I really don't want to spend a lot of time building something I don't like. So I want to make sure I love it, and then I'll just dive in and start building something physically. And this is like for 2014, 15 when I was building models or as a hobby, and I was also motivated too. There's a yearly or annual model show called Wonderfest. It was held in Louisville, Kentucky every year, and a friend of mine at that time said, "You should enter your Shangri-La into this contest." And I said, "Yeah." So I gathered everything that I had at the time, and I've also built the Wasp at the same time and entered the show. And I kind of, was the bug that bit me. And every year was the motivation to build something for the next year and the next year and the next year. And I've been posting these things on my social media, and was noticed by Doug Drexler, who I think also interviewed. And he asked if I would be interested in contributing some of these composite images of my spaceships to the calendar, the Ships of the Line calendar. I said, sure, twist my arm. And that became a regular gig. Every year after Wonderfest, I would take the model I had built for the show and I would composite into a space background, and that became also the calendar entry for that year. Nice. And that's where it kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah. I remember those books you're talking about, the Ships of Starfleet. Very, like you said, as you say, very professional. It kind of had a very realistic feel to them. But you're right. Most of the changes would be very, very minor changes.
Right.
Like I remember there was they called it back then. It wasn't called the Miranda. It was called the Avenger class frigate. But it was the Reliant.
Right.
The different version of it is they just had a slightly different pod on the roll bar. That was it. That was the only change.
Right.
But
they also had the Belknap too, which was a little bit more unique. And they had designed, and it was a little more aggressive in their design, where they took and redesigned the secondary hull, and they repositioned the pylons and designed new cells. So that was something that was more appealing to me. Whereas it was a ship that was 80% original and 10% still unchanged Star Trek, and you got to keep some of that so people can say, "Oh, that's a Star Trek ship." If you go too far off the reservation, they'll be like, "What is this?" And so you got to kind of get dial back a little bit. But
yeah, they did a book. I think it's the last one that I remember. It was red, and it was called Prototype, and that one really did have some unique looking designs in it that I really enjoyed.
That may not be theirs. I think it's a look-alike.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Definitely a pretty close copy. And then there was the books from Jackals, the Jackals guides. Did a lot of, I would call it kit bashing, using the same components in different ways.
Right.
So, I had all those books, all that stuff. I loved all that stuff,
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that Doug Drexler contacted you about the calendar. I'm going to assume, spoiler alert, if you're listening to the show, the Shangri-La is, most people may know it better as the Enterprise G. It's picked up in Picard. How did that happen?
Well, that's also a long story. I should back up to probably Picard season 1. The John E's, who you also may know, starship designer, designed the Enterprise E, and then the Strange New Worlds Enterprise. A big friend of mine, also contributed to the calendar, had been trying to get me into Star Trek on the big screen or even the small screen. So he had me put together a portfolio of my model work for Picard season 1, and they did need me. And when season 2 rolled around, it was a whole new production staff with Dave Blass and Karen Metalis, and they were doing a new Stargazer. So Dave, I think John had kind of pointed the production department collectively to my Instagram, saying, "Look what Bill Krause is doing," and he was trying to sell them an idea of a backlit registry on the starships for the 25th century, rather than the spotlights on painted letters on the ship. And I had done this on a model for my endurance model, where I have raised letters on the stern plate. It says endurance. So I use that as an example to sell them on this idea. So there's Dave Blass and Terry Metalis, some of these guys looking at my website, go, oh, he builds models. And so Dave Blass thought, well, Bill can build us these gold-plated props for the stargazers for the ready room. And that got me into that, doing that part of the project. But then Dave says, well, you're designing or building these models. Also want you to design a TOS predecessor of the stargazer, and then also build that. And I'm like, I'm designing starships for Star Trek? Yes, please. So that got me, into the show, designing a ship for the show. You saw it for like a split second for Behind Jerry Ryan's Head in one shot in one episode, but I'm in Star Trek, on the show. And then since Terry had seen some of my stuff, he was interested in buying some of my models and inquired about the Shangri-La, which I had posted on Facebook. And I had sold that years ago to another friend, so I didn't have it. So he asked me to build him another one. So I started to build him another scratch-built Shangri-La. There are no 3D plans of this model. Right. I have some castings of it or molds that I can cast parts of it. But basically, building another one is scratch building a complete new one. So I started to build this one between seasons 2 and 3. And there have been hints all along between Dave and mostly Terry that Terry might want to use the Shangri-La for the show. And I'm thinking as a background model, like way behind Jody somewhere in one shot. And they had also asked to see a portfolio of all of my model work, as David had suggested. My boss wants to pick out his ship. I had no idea what they're asking, what they were looking for, or at the top, they were hunting for a ship for the show, and wanted to look at everything that I had done. And Shangri-La was part of that. And then one evening, I got an email from Dave Blass. It was a Friday night, asking if they can see the Shangri-La that I was working on for Terry, mocked up with Picard era engines. I'm thinking, I just finished building this thing. It was in primer. I didn't want to break off the engines and glue new things on it, so I kind of Photoshop something up. He went, sure. And I happen to have a couple extra engines left over from the Shangri or the Stargazer model from season 2, so I just Photoshopped those in place of the motion picture era engines on the Shangri-La, and sent it off to him. And then the next day, got an email from Dave saying, "Looks great. We're good to go on this." And good to go. What are we talking about here? Yeah, this is going to be the hero ship for season 3. Okay. Wow, that's great. Wow. Okay. And no changes. Just send us over the files, and we'll get this in production. I go, what files? This is hand built, scratch built. There are no 3D files of it anywhere. And I was leaving that Monday to go work on another film, and it's like, well, I could take a bunch of pictures of it from every angle, and then maybe bring Doug in, and he can rebuild it. So that's what they had to do. And Doug had a week, Monday morning to Friday, to rebuild the Shangri-La based on photographs as best as he could. He was very apologetic that he didn't make it exactly as I had built it, but he did what he could. And he happened to have a 3D model of the engine, so that was already built. And off it went. Boom. Gone. I went, what about it? Oh, we're good. You sure? Oh, okay. And off it went. So that's the last I saw of it.
Actually, one of the questions we have on our list here is why was the show version so scaled up? And now we know it wasn't, we kind of had to go off of what they were working from what you gave them. So I'm guessing that it's one of those things where you just had to, they didn't really have a scale, so to speak.
No, it was later done, and visual effects that it was built the size of the Shangri-La, because it's using a standard TMP era primary hull. Yeah, and all the windows, everything was exactly as it was, and so the scale to that, it's 290 meters. And then somehow in the show they said, well, it needs to be bigger, so they just scaled it up. And I saw a chart that was scaled next to the Enterprise A, then again to the Lunar class Luna or Lunar class Titan, and then I forget what other side, but they had to make the engines the same size as the Stargazer Ranger, so that dictated the scale of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And
click, drag, and it gets bigger.
Yeah. It looks great. It's just a little odd if you're a design geek, and you look at it and say, "Oh, it looks just like the Enterprise." Those windows must be like 10 feet tall, though, because it's so much bigger.
They could be. I mean, why not? I think they're too small as they are, or there's really no two decks on the refit. I mean, it's pretty tight. Those windows are large, and you really have to be looking at knee level, looking out the bottom window. But
Yeah. But
probably closer to our scale now.
So that's interesting, though. So it was because you used the engines from the Stargazer. They had to be the same size, and that really did a lot of dictating what the size was. That's interesting.
Right. But really never saw these ships that close together where a size comparison is even an issue. It's like you see ships in space, like it doesn't matter. You can just see them side by side or dock next to each other. Like it doesn't. The scale thing is like irrelevant at this point.
Did they consider using any of your other designs on screen, or was that the only one they kind of latched onto?
Well, the Intrepid, if you remember from episode 5 of Picard, it comes head to head with the Titan, or Commander Rowe. It comes across and then flies back and blows out the engine of the Intrepid. That is another one of my designs, which was the Wasp, which I built at the same time as the Shangri-La in 2014. And I had been working, when I was done with working on Picard, after they picked the Shangri-La, I went back and had an idea of revising the Wasp and building a TOS predecessor of that. And Terry saw that and goes, "Oh, I have an idea for this ship for the show." I went, "Oh, okay. So can you make this into a 25th century ship?" And here I had all the time in the world, free resources to do whatever I want, and develop the ship over a period of time with Terry, just one-on-one via texting. So what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Like this. And then finally was ready to go to production. He said, "Hey, you're working on this model with Terry. Can we have it?" I happen to have, here you go. Handed it off to Doug, and he did the rest of it. And that is the Duderstadt class Intrepid that you see in the show. So that one is closer to what I had designed from the ground up.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a lot of fun.
Is there? So, you've got a lot of different designs, and most of them are more the TOS type designs. You've got the Endurance, which I just recently saw your pictures of it on Facebook. Wow, with the shuttles and everything. The Repulse. You've got, of course, the Sentinel, which we know. The Hood, the battle cruiser. You've got all these different designs, and you can tell. They really do have the same design aesthetic. You can tell, like to your earlier point, they use similar components. You can tell they must be with the same fleet, we would say, but they all look different. So they're really great. Which one is your favorite? Like if you had to pick one, that's your favorite one, which one would you think it would be?
I think it had to be the Endurance. Because it's, I think, almost completely original. I mean, it's every component, and nothing is borrowed from anything else. I mean, it look like other things, but it's 100% original, scratch-built design, everything. There's nothing that I've borrowed from. I'm not like using part of another ship model or anything. It's just, and I think it just fits. And I spent a long time on that, and I wanted to build something that was very much just me, but yet still kind of looked Star Trek and kind of would fit almost any era that I want to stick it in. And I kind of gravitate to the TOS, TMP era because those are what I grew up with. And those are the eras or the ships I want to see visualized until I'm bored with that era, and I may move on to other things. But because there's so much that you can do. I mean, there's so many lost era type ships you can work on, even between the TMP and TNG. There's 75 years of what was there. You saw the Enterprise C, and that's it. So a lot of room to grow, and but yeah, Endurance I think is my favorite.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty one. My personal favorite. I like the Hood. I think it's just a beautiful design. Plus, I mean, I used to play, for years when I was a kid. I played Starfleet Battles, right? And the ship, the battle cruiser, the Federation battle cruiser, was like my favorite one to play because it was basically the Enterprise, but it was beefed up. Yeah. So it's, your design is like got some of that same feel to me. So I really like that. Plus, I just love the name. The hood is a great name.
Yeah. Hood is basically just a hot rod enterprise. So I took that kit. I originally bought the kit to build the Sentinel. I thought, well, I can use some of these parts to build the Sentinel, and I realized when I finally finished designing the Sentinel that there's nothing in this kit that I can use other than the domes for the bridge and the bottom of the primary hull. So I had this kit laying here, I should just throw something together, and I kind of quickly photoshopped some ideas, and I just took a profile of the Enterprise, and I started in Photoshop just chopping it up and shortening the neck and the secondary hull and the engines, and kind of move things around and adding the new bridge, and just kind of play with the profile and just kind of soup it up, and I thought, this looks okay. It was easy enough to do. I didn't have to buy anything. I just had to kind of basically chop and channel this thing like a hot rod. Just kind of lowered it down and made it shorter and put little scoops in the sides. And basically, it's mostly Enterprise. It's just kind of just chopped down a little bit. And I did the same thing with Caliber.
When I look at the Sentinel class, one thing that really kind of sticks out to me is it just seems like it was largely borrowed from perhaps for the Sovereign class. Now I understand, there's obviously some noticeable differences, but the overall layout to me seems very similar, and the Sovereign class is one of my favorites. So when he showed me this, this game, I thought, oh yeah, this looks sexy. I like this. I love this ship. I think one of the cool things about it is that it does take like the traditional design standards and really kind of I don't know, just molds them enough so that they feel different enough, but still feel like they definitely came from a Federation designer. So it definitely follows a lot of those rules for design, which is really cool.
Yeah,
well, I don't think I was looking at the Sovereign at all when I built it. And really, the only thing that's different about that ship is that it does not have a dorsal. If you just remove one component of the Enterprise, you can then combine the secondary into the primary to make kind of a unibody. And it's the way you have to make it so you can then also include a deflector low enough where it can shoot past the bottom of the primary. And that's always an issue where you have to kind of elongate the secondary hull a little bit so you can get or slim down even the primary to make it so you can see the deflector dish. So the deflector just can see in the front of the ship. But the Sovereign wasn't something I would even consider. I hear this a lot, that, hey, you must have borrowed it from the Sovereign. Go, I had looked at it, but now you say that, that's because they both they don't have dorsals. And I was kind of going more for a more unified, flowing hull, like Voyager, where it's like a unibody, and then you got two pylons and engines. And you can do a lot with that, but then everyone says, oh, that's the Voyager. Oh, that's the Sovereign. I go,
yeah.
Or the Sentinel.
The Sentinel. I guess we all kind of see what we want to see in it, but it's just a beautiful design overall. And again, it was just the moment he showed it to us, I thought, yeah, we can definitely run with this. This is beautiful.
Yeah, to me, when I look at it, I honestly did not make the Sovereign connection at all. I just looked at it. I said, this is the hot rod version of the Enterprise, right? It's sleeker, it's more compact, it's faster. Yeah, this is what we want, So, and we've had to, there are no game rules for this thing, so. Or even really any detailed, truly detailed deck plans beyond, you get the bridge deck plan from the stuff that Starship Dynamics did. But so we've been kind of making things up as we've gone along, but it's been a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. He's got to complete the deck by deck cutaway too of that ship.
Yeah, we've got that. Yeah.
And there was a guy who did a full facile gaming thing for the set too. If you found that.
We did. Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen they've done, I think they did all of your ships, and I know they've done a bunch of other, like, fan-produced ships as well. So, one of the questions that, again, one of our listeners had, there are people, myself included, that tried to buy the deck plans, and we couldn't get them. is there any chance of some point in the future that you might actually work with someone to produce a tech manual of your ships?
Well, I was thinking of doing something like that myself. As you may know, I did a volume 1 of all my models of a book, basically a coffee table book, last year. And for this, I basically just took all the photographs of all the completed builds I've done in the last 10 years and kind of combined them into a photo book with some directions about how they were built. But deck plans and all that kind of stuff, that takes a lot of time to have to draw them, come up with all the specs information, and that's all time that takes away from me building and designing the ships. So unless I hire someone to do that, who I can trust and knows the inside of my head as well as I do, to do that, that kind of stuff will have to come out when I find the time to do that, because it's just time away from the workbench. And I've got paying clients who are commissioning me to build models, so that's the priority for me, is to do that kind of stuff. But I do want to expand on my volume 2 of more of the, I guess, in-universe existence of these ships and some of the specs and things that people are fans of that than they are just a pretty picture of a ship. So I will try to, at least within this volume 2, it might concentrate on another ship, which will be the one I'm currently working on, which is Tornado, which is the TOS predecessor of the Wasp and the Duderstadt. And since I've built all of those and I now have the complete trilogy of the ships, I can kind of put them on one book and kind of expand on that whole lineage. And
Yeah.
so whether there's interest in it or not, I don't know, but
I'm sure that there will be, and I can tell you right now that if you ever do produce a book like that, I know the 3 of us will buy it for sure. I know there are others will too. So yeah, just let us know. That's 3.
You want fries with that? Okay.
Absolutely. But so that leads me to another question. Actually, you have this TOS TMP Picard lineage with the Tornado.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any plans to do that sort of work with the other designs? Like, for example, is there ever going to be the TMP version of the Sentinel?
I had not thought of one for Sentinel, and the reason why is because I look at it as a late TM or TOS era ship. It was built in the late 2260s, so it's just before TMP. So any kind of refit, if it does would happen much later, like 2290s. So even if they even thought was a viable ship to be refitted. And I was looking at it, well, not every ship went through this magic rainbow in 2270 where they were all refitted from TOS to TMP. It's like ships were being being built every year from they first started being starships. So the technology is always constantly evolving, and they would be refitted all the time and with different levels of technology. So when you say a TMP refit, doesn't apply to everything, I don't think. Depends on when they were built and how soon they needed a refit. Enterprise first being built, I think, in 2240s, was 30 years old, and it needed a refit in 2270, and that's why it looks like it does then. If you look at my, say, Excalibur, which is kind of a blend of TMP and TOS, and it's also a late refit of that ship, because it was in my head, it of course was damaged in the M5 encounter with the Ultimate Computer. Both Hood and Excalibur were. So they got kind of refitted, and you might see some little bits of new things on that ship, like there's a TMP style bridge and a TOS saucer, and some little nuances here and there that kind of show the technology that existed just prior to the motion picture. So I see every year preceding and after the motion picture as being a different level of technology, a different type of refit. So if you do see a refit of Sentinel, it may not have the rainbow Aztec paint job and all that. You might think of the refit of the motion picture era, but something more closer to the Enterprise B or beyond. At that point, it may be a totally different ship, so who knows?
Yeah,
but I don't like the thought
it is, I'm sure it look great.
Updating the TMP just by copying that style to another ship. So I look at it as something different to do rather than just, rudimentary.
Well, I'm sure whatever you come up with will look very slick. I guess, we did pay attention as close as we could to, the timelines for your ship. And we did know that it came out in 2268. Our game actually takes place in 2269.
Mhm.
Trying to find a way to avoid the guys having to wear the blue pajamas when that comes along. I'm still trying to find a way to figure that out. But
Yeah. Well, I think I designed some uniforms. If you saw the ones I did for Sentinel, they're wearing
I did.
A Strange New Worlds type of uniform. I designed those like 25 years ago,
Wow.
and
Mhm.
I think Axner is using them now too. But it's a very simple thing, and I thought they can still work in the motion picture era.
Mhm.
They kind of fit the J.J. Abrams kind of look a little bit, so I think they're kind of timeless. Those colors should exist in the TMP era, I think, and they don't have to be the same monochromatic tan and blues and grays, but I see some color.
Mhm. So what are you working on now, or can you tell us, have you got anything new kind of that you're thinking about, new design that you're kicking around? If you can't tell us, that's cool.
Oh, I can tell you if I can remember what they are, but well, the Tornadoes are being done. There's two of them being built concurrently, which is always fun because you kind of save some time with pairing up on a ship, and it does take a lot of room on the workbench, but it does save a bit when you're doing the same thing twice in a row. But I had sketched out an idea for a new shuttlecraft. I think you've seen the Javelin, which
Yes.
I designed when I did the Sentinel. I wanted a new shuttlecraft that would go with that ship. So I've been using that same design of shuttlecraft that would be assigned to all my ships, Repulse and Endurance and Excalibur, and I just put a new name on them. But there's been kicking around an idea to take that shuttle a little bit further down the line to see a refit of that. And that's been kicking around the back of my head. I've been working on some ideas for that. And there's also a TMP era ship, which I'm calling, I can't remember that, that'll come to me. It's a ship that her name that came from one of the Sentinel listings. Gosh, I forgot now. But it was a more of appropriate looking ship. Again, taking some of the existing components of, like, I had, again, another huge box of TMP 350 scale parts that people have just been giving me, and a mountain of them. Like, I should do something with this. So quickly without much time, so I quickly did a sketch of a ship that would use some of these parts, and kind of revising the engine a little bit so I can use the bulk of the nacelles, but just changing the front of them a little bit and give them a more up-to-date look with maybe a glowing kind of facade using the rest of the standard linear engine, but Electra. That's what the ship was, and I think I put something on Facebook about that, and people were like, "Well, looks cool." And it was a very early draft, and it doesn't look that cool. I'm going to pull it down and look at something better later on. But those are the two that are currently in the works as far as new designs, and there's a new Repulse coming out also. I had updated a client who asked me to build them another Repulse, and the one I had built was a one-off scratch build, and I wanted to do this, and people asked for another one. I go, shoot, this doesn't exist as a digital file. I just can't press print, and boom, there's another one. I have to, think about how I did this, and so I went back and actually I had designed the Repulse. One of my first ships I had ever designed digitally, and I had done this. I think right after Sentinel, I started to design the Repulse in SketchUp, and it's not a great model. It was really terrible. So I went back and I basically rebuilt the the Repulse digitally, and I kind of changed some things to it and added some what I call a Mark III version, which has a different engine, which uses actually the ones from the Tornado. But I've given the client the option for either engine, because I can just kind of pop them in and out the pylons without changing anything else. So those are coming also, hopefully this next quarter in 2025. But it's another busy year. But I've been closed to commissions for about 2.5 years now, because the wait list is exceeds my lifespan, I think.
That doesn't surprise us in the
Oh, I'm
least.
sure, yeah. No, not at all.
But these people are on wait list every
So
you be customers. So
sure.
yeah.
So you did, you've done a lot of the Starfleet ships. You did the one Klingon, the D7.
Mhm.
Any thoughts about doing, like say, because I love what you did with the D7 to update it, like an updated, the classic Romulan Warbird from TOS, or any, other of the kind of enemy ships or something like that. Any, if you thought about doing any more of those, or is just too busy with your.
No, I mean, I've got lots of irons in the fire, as you say. I've got a Ramen design I started and didn't finish to my satisfaction. So there's a lot of projects that are just concepts I've started, and I'll put them in their folders with whatever reference material that it inspired them, and they're all various levels of ready to kick off. So there's probably 24 ships and things of various races and eras that they're waiting for me to just kind of dive into when I have the time. But yeah, I thought about a Romulan ship, and in fact, I started one. Never got too far with it, but I've built the Romulan bird of prey with the classic painted bird on the bottom last year. Right after I did the Klingon ship, and they were both the first two alien ships I had ever done, and since. So that was great fun. I love doing the Klingon ship. I love getting my hands dirty because it was fun making it grungy and dirty, and so you get kind of locked in this bottle of building these perfectly clean white Starfleet ships. They can't get dirty, they can't get rusty, but a Klingon ship, you can beat the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Still doesn't look good.
Klingons, they don't care.
So the Klingons look like their ships look like they've been MacGyvered. I mean,
Yeah.
It's held together by baling wire and chewed up gah.
But the guns work. That's what matters.
That's a shame. Yes, of course.
Yeah. So we have one last question for you, and it goes back to an episode that we did. What was it, 2 or 3 episodes ago, where we all listed our top favorite design of the Enterprise. Of course, all of us loved the refit. The E. I was the only one that actually likes the C. So we're curious, which one is your favorite? I mean, if you had to pick any of them, the JJ verse, television, any of the films, which one do you use kind of your favorite version of the Enterprise?
Well, I think obviously the refit, as you mentioned, is my favorite, and that's what made Star Trek real to me. Seeing it on the big screen, just blown away by the level of detail when you spend that 5-minute tour around the Enterprise and dry dock, and you're looking at it and I go, oh my God, this is, and the care that they took to design it and to build it. I mean, Probert and their team, I mean, every aspect of the ship is just, absolutely perfect. And I can't think of a better update of a design than from TOS to the refit, as far as, a ship design goes. That's it right there. So that's my greatest inspiration is that era of the Probert era, and he set that standard and that look for starships to come from that point forward.
Yeah,
it's funny you should mention that because I had the privilege of meeting Andy 2014. I'm friends with his son, and they happened to be coming. They were in town. They came over for dinner. We got a chance to meet them and whatnot. And one thing I'm absolutely convinced of is that every designer has their own rules, and like very specific things for their designs. I remember, I think the faux pas that I kind of let loose was I mentioned the refit class being an Enterprise class, and he was like, "No, that's a refit Constitution class." It's like there's no two ways about it. And I'm like, okay, and it's really interesting to know because you don't have a lot of I guess canon information. At least that wasn't available at the time. We just think, okay, this is I think when I looked at it, it was FASA was still doing a lot of the design work and whatnot for their RPG, which of course I have a copy of on my on my bookshelf here. I have a copy from 1981, 82, I think it is. But still, you know, the thing is, he was very specific. It's like, no, it is not an enterprise class. An enterprise class, technically, like, you know, the 1701A was an enterprise class. It was something that was built specifically for that particular starship. I mean, I think I believe that. I honestly, I don't remember what the ship was supposed to be called. I knew it when we did the episode, but they, Starfleet decided to repurpose it for Enterprise 1701A, which, much like they did in Picard season 3, when the Titan A became the Enterprise G. Yeah. So again,
Yes.
It's kind of it's really important to to know what's what, and it's been a fantastic ride for us to be able to sit here and enjoy your work while at the same time getting to talk to you about it. That's I think one of the most enjoyable aspects of doing a podcast is that we periodically get a chance to talk to really cool people, and you are one of those.
Well, thank you.
And Lars, I believe the name of the ship was supposed to be the Yorktown.
Thank you. Yes.
Or the Chiho.
Yeah, I've seen that one too. Yeah. That's one thing with
it says Chiho.
The canon is kind of all over the place sometimes with what things are supposed to be called or how they work or what they do.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We still enjoy it.
It's still science fiction.
It is. So, but, Bill, really, truly, it's a great pleasure to have you on. Me personally, huge, I am a modeler. I am nothing close to what the skills that you have, but I do some work, used to paint miniatures for commissions and stuff like that for games, but it's just a great pleasure to have you on, hear about the work you're doing. We absolutely love it. Again, if you ever do a book, please let us know. We will absolutely all buy a copy. I know other people will too. But any closing thoughts from anyone?
I think I've made my I think I've fanboyed sufficiently in this episode. I do tend to do that, but it's again one of the greatest joys of doing this show is that we have had the opportunity to talk to some really cool people. I want to say that our first guest ever was actually back 2014 seems to be a pivotal year. But Gary Graham was our first guest, and then we've talked to other people along the way, and of course Doug Drexler, and
most recently.
Yes, that was the most recent one. But we've also talked to people like we talked to the people who did Star Trek Continues. I remember that. That was good fun. So again, I think I've fanboyed enough, and I again really appreciate you coming on to talk to us.
It's been a great pleasure. Always fun.
Yeah, we appreciate it very much. Well, thank you for joining us here on Treknicity, where we do the deep dive on all things in Star Trek multiverse. I am your host, Mike Raper. With me are my co-hosts, Patrick Murray, Lars DeSenza, and again, our very special guest, Bill Krause. Do be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Treknicity.com, as well as visiting all of our socials listed here. Find us on your favorite podcast service, such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, or Amazon Music. If you have ideas for future episode subjects or guests you would like us to interview, please let us know with the email at show@Treknicity.com, or you can DM us on any of our social media accounts. Now that we've talked about all this, if you let us know what you think, did we get this right? Did we get this wrong? Did we miss any really crucial questions that we should have asked? Let us know. And as always, rock out with your Spock out. Until next time.